Was a girl running in a group. She had a high-speed motor in a 40 Ford coupe. She had a racing cam and a supercharged. Look at Buddy, hot rod and large. She's a hot rod. She's a hot rod.
I got one more quick story before we get into my main story of the week. Honda is going to start verifying a solid-state battery, Chuck. Their production. They're getting ready to ramp it up. Honda will begin verification on production of solid-state batteries for its next generation electric vehicles at a new demonstration line in Sakura, just north of Tokyo, Honda Motor Company said. Honda, racing to roll out a new generation of electric vehicles, will begin verification on production of Game Changer solid-state batteries in January and a new line in Japan. At a new line in Japan. The facility in the city of Sakura, just north of Tokyo, will test production processes for solid-state batteries that Honda hopes to deploy in its EVs in the second half of the 2020s, so 2025 and up. In other words, what we said is coming to fruition. They have to get away from that ion, the lithium. And the solid state is going to be better. It's going to be a lot better for us. I'm going to tell you something else. That is another one that actually leads into what I'm going to talk about now. Because what I'm leading into here is the state of the electric car business. Would you like to know? Wouldn't you like to know, Charles, what kind of shape the electric car business is in?
I bet they want to know for sure.
It's not good. I mean, it's not good. Here's a deal where they brought these batteries out and they put billions of dollars into research and building plants to build these batteries and do all this great stuff. And now they're trying to find a better mousetrap. It's going to be like another Fisker. What about are they going to be convertible? Are you going to be able to take these batteries, these new solid-state batteries, and put them in the lithium-ion battery cars? I mean, what's the deal? Because the lithium-ions are the ones that catch fire. And they know that. But they just kept building them. They just kept dumping billions. Well, of course, the manufacturers were dumping it. The government was dumping it. And now, here we are on the verge of 2025, and everybody in the car business, everybody in the car manufacturing business is in a turmoil. They're all choking. They're all choking on their food, let me just tell you. The factories are cutting back. The CEOs are bailing. They're like jumping off of ledges, like the stock market crash. It's just unbelievable. They put all their money in one basket. They put all their eggs in one basket. And look what happened. I'll tell you what happened. I'm going to tell you right now. Here's the first story. Mercedes. And I'm not a huge Mercedes fan, but I'm not a poo-pooer of Mercedes. Mercedes is going to cut costs by several billion euros a year amid profit decline. Everybody's got a little bit of profit decline. Mercedes hopes the next CLA, shown camouflaged here, will be among new product offerings that will help turn its fortunes around, according to Mercedes-Benz. In Berlin, headline in Berlin, Mercedes-Benz is rolling out a sweeping cost-cutting program following a disappointing third quarter when profits in its passenger car segments fell by two-thirds, and its margin fell to just 4.7%. Hokey smoke booming. Can you imagine a company losing two-thirds of its profit in one quarter? That's, one of the oldest car companies in the world. The automaker aims to reduce costs by several billion euros annually over the coming years, a company spokesperson told Automotive News Europe, the sister publication, Automobile Woche, whatever that means. Okay, a guy named Wilhelm did not comment on potential workforce reductions, but said that labor costs are under scrutiny. Mercedes' 91,000 tariff employees in Germany are protected by job guarantees, unlike temporary workers. So they got 91,000 workers that they're going to have to deal with to cut back on this stuff. They're cutting back. They have to. Everybody raced. They raced to get these electric cars on the market, And now they're all having bad times. And that's a start. When Mercedes has bad times, you know things are bad. Robert Bosch, the Bosch company, plans to cut up to 5,550 jobs. The latest sign of a struggle in Germany's creaking auto sector. No. Which is grappling with competition from cheaper Chinese rivals and weak demand. Weak demand, Charles. Let's highlight that weak demand. Bosch said it's planning to cut 3,500 jobs by the end of 2027 to cross-domain computer solutions division, half of which will be at German sites. The company flagged weak demand in intelligent driver assistance systems and solutions for automated driving. That is going by the wayside all of a sudden again. You have a couple companies that's all they do is autonomy, and they're hanging in there, but the other ones are starting to say, you know what, we're just going to wait a while. They're broke. Bosch's Works Council and the IG Metal Union expressed their opposition to the layoffs in a statement. We will now organize our resistance to these plans at all levels, said Frank Sell, deputy head of the Works Council. Now, what I want to know, Charles, and you can tell me, I'm sure you can. All right. You can tell me, I know, when they, we will now organize our resistance to these plans. The union is going to strike them because they're going to close these plants. Well, how do they get back to solvency? How do they get back to profit if they absolutely do not have profit? They got to cut. They got to cut somewhere. They have to do some stuff. And again, they're dropping like flies. The CEOs, the CFOs, the bums are dropping like flies. Here, Nissan is facing a record debt bill with 1 year left to fix their finances. They're in trouble. Nissan Motor Company will have a year of breathing space in 2025 before hitting a record bond maturity wall as concerns mount without its ability to generate cash. They're not selling anything. I'll tell you a story in a minute, Charles. You're going to laugh. Well, you're not going to laugh. The automaker and its group firms have about $1.6 billion of debt due next year, a slight decrease from 2024. But that figure will jump to around $5.6 billion in 2026, the most in Bloomberg compiled data going back to 1996. The debt due in 2026 in yen, dollars, and euros. This ain't good. This ain't good. Boy, my dad has slapped my back of my head for saying ain't. Nissan shares have swung wildly in recent days, tumbling after its slash profit forecast and 9,000 jobs, but jumping after one of the most influential activist investors in Japan took a stake in the company. So they're going to try and make it work. They're going to try. But you know what? They're hurting. They're in trouble. 5.6 billion a year they got to pay back. That's all the bonds they took out to do these electric cars, do the studies on them, to do the research, all that stuff. They got here. Nissan forecasts 17% cut to U.S. production in fiscal 2024. Nissan will reduce some assembly plant shifts from 5 days a week to 4 through the end of the calendar year. This, according to Nissan. They're all screaming. They're just all screaming. Slumping demand in Nissan's showroom is being felt at its 2 assembly plants in the southeastern U.S. Nissan North America expects to cut U.S. production by 17% during its 2024 fiscal year, which ends March 31st. The Japanese automaker has said it is reducing global production 20% to manage oversupply and ballooning costs. Well, they're ballooning because you spent it. In a planning document sent to suppliers in November and reviewed by Automotive News, Nissan expects to build 503,000 vehicles in Canton, Mississippi and Smyrna, Tennessee, in the fiscal year, down from 605,435 the prior year. So they're going to make 12,000 fewer vehicles. I just don't, you know, they're like I say, they're all looking at each other saying, why did we put all this money into electrification when it was untested? We didn't know what it was going to do. And we didn't have any infrastructure for it. They say people don't want to buy these electric cars, Charles, because they're afraid they won't be able to charge it. Well, they can be afraid because there's not enough charging stations out there, and some of them that are out there don't work.
Well, can I jump in real quick? Because there was an interesting story that came out of Illinois this week. There was a company called Lion Electric, and they had opened a manufacturing plant in Shanahan, Illinois. And they originally had promised, so of course, the state of Illinois gave them millions of dollars in subsidies.
Absolutely.
They promised them hundreds of millions of dollars in tax incentives if they hired the eventual 1,400 workers. They experienced a bottleneck of government funding. So again, this whole thing was predicated on government funding. They were producing buses that cost about twice as much as the average school bus would cost. And of course, as you know, there's very few school districts that have the money to spend twice as much money to new buses.
They're all crying for money.
And upgrade their infrastructure to be able to handle electric. So these guys were trying to sell buses for twice of what they're paying now. And the whole house of cards was based on government incentives, state, local, federal, whatever. And they just couldn't keep it running. So they closed their factory this week.
Don't a lot of school districts have to park their cars outside, their buses outside?
Yeah.
And it's wintertime in the
and
Midwest.
remember, so they have to plug them all in overnight.
But they're not going to charge.
Well, but I'm saying right now they have to plug them all in to heat them, right? Because they're diesel. And so now you've got guys that have to be up there, get it there in the morning or run all night and just make sure they're plugged in.
The warming the diesel works.
Right, but now
charging in this weather does not.
So now we're saying school districts have 100 buses that all get back at the same time every night. Somebody has to go around and plug them all in, and now you've got 100 buses on the grid of your small little town.
All the street lights in your town are going to fall out.
So they must have plugged in all the buses.
They're all going to pop.
But or what are they going to do? Tell the guy to come in at 3 a.m. to plug in the buses?
Yeah.
I mean, what can you do?
But besides that, when it's below zero, they're not going to charge properly.
Right.
They don't. They got to get back to this solid state. Get rid of that lithium ion. I don't know. I got to tell you, it's just not. And here's a story for you. Nissan CFO Stephen Ma is stepping down. No, they're all running for cover. CFO Stephen Ma set to step down from his position. People with knowledge is set to step down from his position. People with knowledge of the matter told Bloomberg, marking yet another executive change at a challenging time for the Japanese automaker. No, they're just terrible. You know what? We come back, I'm going to finish off telling you all these people that are running away from the car business. It's bad. Things are not good. You know, the Stephen Ma, it's not clear whether he may be demoted or leave the company, said one person asking not to be identified, because the move hasn't been announced. This is an exclusive scoop. The change which comes 17 months after the Ashwani Gupta left as Nissan CEO or COO, follows an announcement last month that it will eliminate 9,000 jobs. Of course, we read into that. Although 5 years have passed since the dramatic arrest of the ouster of Carlos Ghosn, Chairman Carlos the Edsel, the car maker remains mired in a management upheaval. Yes, it is. Ma declined comment, as did a spokesman for Nissan. They probably all want to know how they got this info. It's supposed to be on the hush hush.
They're probably, the security guards right now, they're checking every box coming in and out of that building.
Oh, you bet. You bet they are. Everybody's bailing like rats leaving a ship. Stellantis here, we knew this was coming. But it's just, for a guy to just walk away. Stellantis CEO Carlos Tavares. Why do they always have to have a Carlos involved in the COO position? Anyway, he's stepping down after a profit slump slumped and the U.S. sales weakened, and the maker of Jeep SUVs and Fiat cars effective immediately, the company said in a statement. So he was in charge of Jeep SUVs and Fiats. Stellantis said in October that it had begun a process to find a successor to Tavares. He's 66 years old. It's about time to get a replacement. Who told reporters he would stay on until the end of his mandate in early 2026. I don't think they want him around that long, Charles. I think they want him gone. The company's board of directors, under the chairmanship of John Elkann, accepted Carlos Tavares' resignation today from his role as chief executive officer with immediate effect. Goodbye, Stellantis said in a December 1st statement. The process will be concluded within the first half of 2025, the company said, adding that a new interim executive committee chaired by Elkann will be established. The government makes it clear that Tavares and the board were not in agreement on unspecified issues. In other words, the executive board, they couldn't get along with this guy either.
Well, it's interesting. One of the people that they talked to, there was a professor. They asked him about this situation. It was interesting what he said. He said, it's, what's really driving the situation in North America is they've had appalling results of very dated product lineup, rising inventory, slipping market share. So basically what he's saying is that their lineup is very just dated.
Oh, yeah.
And that's one of the problems you run into is, the way when we follow this industry, there's so many announcements about all these new technologies, all these neat, and if you're not keeping up, if you fall behind, like we always talk about with everybody falling behind Tesla and things like that, if you fall behind in the technology, it's hard to catch up.
Oh, with technology, if you fall behind a week,
right,
you're messed.
So you pick the wrong horse, you spend all your R&D on the wrong thing. Now it's hard to catch up.
Well, and it turns out that this was not all this information or all this money they put into the electrification of the car business was not necessarily on hand. It was not in the bank.
Right.
They went and borrowed it.
Right.
They have loans. They have notes, balloon notes that are coming due.
Right.
And this was supposed to be payable because the electric cars sold like hotcakes.
Well, and as we've talked about, though, it's not only going into EV, but, a lot of these guys were getting ready to shut down their internal combustion
engines,
their lines, the research, all of those guys that used to, make these cars more efficient every year, they all got shoved aside and got put in the EV factory. Now all of a sudden, now they're saying, well, never mind. Now you go back the other way.
Well, and there's a group out there. I mean, of guys that were laid off, and now they're going to have to go back to work. They're going to have to start making internal combustion again.
Right.
And they're going to start making hydrogen.
Right.
And hybrids.
Or the other thing.
The hybrids are the ones that are catching up.